Hey guys, tonight we're taking a gentle journey, a slow drift back in time to a place of unparalleled beauty and tranquility. Imagine, if you will, the soft splash of fountains, the sweet perfume of blossoms carried on a warm breeze, and the cool shade of ancient trees providing respite from the sun. You're standing in a garden, but not just any garden. This is a Mughal garden, a forgotten paradise, meticulously crafted not just for pleasure, but as a reflection of heaven on earth. Picture yourself wandering along geometric pathways where water channels murmur contentedly, and vibrant flowers burst forth in a riot of color, organized with an almost spiritual precision. It's a place designed for quiet contemplation, for escaping the clamor of the world. A place where emperors sought solace and poets found inspiration. You might be thinking, a garden, how exciting can that be? But trust me, these aren't your grandma's petunias. Unless your grandma was an emperor with unlimited resources and an army of landscape architects. These are sprawling, intricate masterpieces, and to truly appreciate them, you need to immerse yourself in their history, their philosophy, and the sheer human effort that went into creating them. You probably wouldn't survive a day trying to build one of these without modern machinery, let alone the intricate planning involved. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins with a profound concept, one that shaped every petal and every flowing stream within these magnificent enclosures: the concept of paradise. For the mules, who were of Central Asian Turkic-Mongol origin with strong Persian cultural ties, the idea of paradise wasn't just an abstract religious belief. It was a blueprint for living, and crucially, for gardening. The Persian word for garden, paradisa, literally means walled enclosure, and it's from this ancient root that we get our word paradise. So, you see, a garden was, by definition, a piece of heaven brought to earth, a sheltered, fertile space in often harsh, arid landscapes. It was a place of ordered beauty, reflecting the divine order that they believed governed the universe. When you stepped into a Mughal garden, you were meant to feel as though you had entered a sacred space, a microcosm of the ideal world. This wasn't just a whimsical notion. It was deeply ingrained in Islamic theology and Persian culture. The Quran itself describes paradise as a garden with flowing rivers, abundant fruit trees, and eternal springs. Imagine the longing for such a place if you lived in a hot, dusty, or arid region. The garden, therefore, became a tangible manifestation of this spiritual yearning, a physical representation of the afterlife's promised tranquility and bounty. Every element, from the carefully regulated water channels to the precise planting of fruit trees and fragrant flowers, was intended to evoke this heavenly vision. You might even say they were trying to outdo the divine just a little bit in their earthly creations. But it wasn't purely spiritual. These gardens also served very practical purposes. They were places of leisure where emperors and their courts could escape the oppressive heat of Indian summers. They were venues for important state meetings, private celebrations, and quiet contemplation. Imagine conducting diplomacy surrounded by the scent of jasmine rather than in a stuffy, windowless room. Much more conducive to peaceful negotiations, don't you think? They provided fresh air, shade, and a constant source of fresh water. which in itself was a luxury in many parts of India. They were status symbols, too, broadcasting the wealth, power, and refined taste of their owners. A truly grand garden was a statement, a whispered boast of dominion over nature itself. The underlying philosophy was one of control and order imposed upon nature, but with a gentle hand, unlike some European gardens that sought to tame nature with rigid geometric patterns to the point of absurdity. I'm looking at you. Versailles, with your endlessly trimmed box hedges. Mughal gardens aimed for a harmonious blend. They used straight lines and perfect symmetry, yes, but they also celebrated the organic forms of plants and the natural flow of water. It was a careful balance, much like trying to keep a toddler in a neat little square without them noticing the boundaries. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation was religious piety or simply a profound aesthetic desire to create beauty. But perhaps it was, as often happens, a delightful blend of both. As you continue your imagined stroll, perhaps you can hear the soft rustle of silken robes or the distant melodic notes of a sitar. This serene vision, this very blueprint of paradise on earth, wasn't born in a vacuum. It was brought to India, quite literally, in the mind of a remarkable individual, Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. He was the founder of the Mughal dynasty, a restless, poetic, and often homesick conqueror who yearned for the cool, ordered gardens of his Central Asian homeland. Think of him as the original expat, constantly dreaming of the comforts he'd left behind. Babur, whose name you might recognize from history books as the first Mughal emperor, was a descendant of both Timur and Genghis Khan. Quite the family tree, wouldn't you say? He was born in Fergana, a fertile valley now in modern-day Uzbekistan, a region with a rich tradition of Persian-style gardening. These were not wild, untamed landscapes, but carefully cultivated spaces reflecting an aesthetic that prized symmetry, geometric precision, and the abundant use of water. When Babur eventually conquered parts of India, a land vastly different from his ancestral home, he found himself somewhat unimpressed by the local landscape and its existing garden traditions. It was, to his eyes, rather chaotic and lacking in the formal elegance he cherished. His autobiography, the Baburnama, provides an incredibly intimate glimpse into his thoughts, desires, and even his gardening preferences. It's like reading a very old, very detailed travel blog, complete with critiques of local architecture and musings on the best way to plant a cherry tree. In its pages, he laments the absence of proper Persian-style gardens in India, complaining about the lack of running water, carefully planned layouts, and the formal beauty he was accustomed to. He truly missed the Charbagh or four-part garden, which was the hallmark of Timurid and Persian garden design. This was more than just a preference. It was a deeply felt cultural yearning. So, what does an emperor do when he misses his homeland's horticulture? He simply starts building his own, of course. Babur's vision wasn't merely about creating pleasant spaces. It was about recreating a piece of his lost paradise, a tangible link to his heritage in a new and unfamiliar land. His first attempts were in Agra, where he ordered the construction of a garden called Bagh-i-Nilufar, or the Lotus Garden. This was a significant undertaking, as it involved diverting river water and engineering channels to create the flowing streams and fountains that were essential to the Charbagh style. It wasn't easy, and he encountered numerous challenges, but his determination to impose his aesthetic will upon the Indian landscape was unwavering. Imagine trying to install a complex irrigation system in a new country with limited technology, all while running an empire. Puts your weekend gardening projects in perspective, doesn't it? The key element, the very heartbeat of these gardens, was water. For Babur, water wasn't just for irrigation. It was an artistic element, a soundscape, a cooling presence, and a symbol of purity and life. The Charbagh design, which we'll delve into more deeply in the next section, is fundamentally structured around water channels that divide the garden into 4 main sections. These channels would often lead to central pools or fountains, creating a sense of movement and refreshment. This emphasis on water was particularly vital in India, where the climate could be intensely hot and dry for much of the year. The sound of trickling water provided an almost ASMR-like calming effect, a subtle whisper that permeated the entire space. While Babur's gardens in India might not have reached the dizzying heights of later Mughal creations, they laid the foundational principles. He introduced the core elements, the symmetrical layout, the importance of flowing water, and the creation of walled enclosures. These initial efforts, though perhaps more utilitarian than overtly luxurious, served as the genesis of what would become a distinct and glorious tradition. Historians still argue whether Babur's gardens were truly paradise gardens in their fully developed sense, or if they were more experimental, reflecting a work in progress, but their foundational importance is undeniable. He was, in essence, planting the seeds for an entire dynasty's horticultural obsession. And thankfully for us, he did so with an almost obsessive attention to detail, meticulously planning and overseeing the construction, even getting his hands dirty, or at least directing others to get their hands dirty, to ensure his vision was realized. Now, with the vision of Babur firmly planted in our minds, let's unfurl the blueprint itself, the very DNA of the Mughal garden, the Charbagh layout. Imagine, if you will, looking down from above, perhaps from a particularly relaxed cloud, onto a perfectly ordered landscape. What you'd see is a garden divided into 4 distinct sections by intersecting walkways and flowing water channels. This isn't just a pretty pattern, it's a profound statement, a deliberate echo of the Quranic description of paradise, with its 4 rivers flowing from a central spring. The word Charbagh literally translates from Persian as 4 gardens. Simple enough, right? But the genius lies in its execution. At the heart of this symmetrical design is often a central building, a tomb, a pavilion, or a fountain, acting as the spiritual and aesthetic nucleus. From this central point, precisely laid out water channels radiate outwards, dividing the garden into those characteristic 4 quadrants. Think of it like a giant, meticulously planned tic-tac-toe board, but instead of X's and O's, you have fragrant flower beds, fruit trees, and murmuring water. This design wasn't just a Mughal innovation, it was a continuation of a long and rich Persian tradition, one that the Mughals adopted, adapted, and elevated to an art form. These water channels weren't just decorative. They were vital for irrigation, distributing precious water evenly throughout the garden. But more than that, they were visual and auditory pathways, guiding your eye and your ear through the landscape. The gentle gurgle of water, the shimmering reflections, all added to the serene and immersive experience. In a land where water was, and still often is, a precious commodity, its generous and artful display in a garden was a powerful symbol of wealth, power, and divine favor. It was like saying, yes, we have so much water, we can let it just flow for beauty's sake. The 4 quadrants themselves were not identical. While maintaining symmetry, they often featured different plantings. One section might be dedicated to fragrant herbs, another to fruit trees, a third to flowering shrubs, and a fourth to open lawns. This created a sensory journey as you moved through the garden. The sharp scent of mint might give way to the sweetness of roses, followed by the tart aroma of ripening pomegranates. It was a sophisticated dance for the senses, carefully choreographed to provide constant delight without overwhelming. Imagine walking through a perfume counter, but outdoors, and much, much grander. The pathways, usually paved or made of brick, were often slightly raised, allowing the water channels to run alongside them, sometimes with small cascades or chatters, creating a gentle, soothing sound. These chatters weren't just for noise. They were often sculpted with intricate patterns, causing the water to ripple and sparkle as it flowed over them, adding another layer of visual interest. It was a subtle engineering marvel, transforming a simple necessity into an element of exquisite beauty. Historians still argue whether the primary inspiration for the Charbagh was purely practical for irrigation, or if its spiritual symbolism as a representation of paradise was the driving force from its inception. Chances are, like many great designs, it was a beautiful symbiosis of both. The symbolism, however, is impossible to ignore, even if just for a moment, into a sacred, ideal realm. It was a place where order triumphed over chaos, where beauty reigned supreme, and where the divine presence felt palpable. Even if you weren't particularly religious, you couldn't help but feel a sense of profound peace and harmony in such a meticulously crafted environment. It was designed to soothe your soul and calm your mind, much like listening to a gentle history podcast before drifting off to sleep. As you continue your contemplative wander through the idealized Mughal garden, your senses are constantly engaged, not just by sight and scent, but by the omnipresent murmur and glint of water's soul. It's impossible to overstate the importance of water in these paradisiacal settings. For the mules, water wasn't merely a practical necessity for irrigation. It was the very lifeblood of the garden, an artistic medium, a sensory delight, and a profound symbol. Think of it less as a utility and more as a silent, flowing protagonist in the story of the garden. The ingenious hydraulic systems that supplied these vast gardens were a testament to Mughal engineering prowess. This wasn't just a matter of digging a ditch. It involved sophisticated techniques for diverting river water, often from distant sources, through elaborate networks of canals, pipes made of terracotta or lead, and reservoirs. Imagine the sheer logistical challenge of ensuring a continuous, controlled flow of water to every corner of a sprawling garden, especially in a time before modern pumps. It required a deep understanding of gravity, fluid dynamics, and precise surveying. Sometimes large wells, known as bowls, were dug, and water was lifted using Persian wheels powered by bullocks, then fed into the garden's system. It was slow, laborious work requiring constant maintenance, but the results were undeniably breathtaking. Once the water entered the garden, its journey was carefully choreographed. It would typically flow through shallow, stone-lined channels, often exquisitely carved with patterns that made the water ripple and sparkle. These channels, as we discussed, formed the backbone of the Charbagh layout, dividing the garden into its distinct quadrants. But they also served as miniature rivers, creating a soothing, continuous soundscape. Imagine the gentle lapping against the smooth stone, a subtle auditory embrace that encouraged relaxation and quiet thought. It was the ultimate ambient sound, perfectly designed to lull you into a state of serene contemplation. Beyond the channels, water manifested in various enchanting forms. There were central pools, sometimes large enough to be navigated by small boats, where the sky and surrounding pavilions were perfectly mirrored, creating an illusion of boundless space. Then there were the numerous fountains, some gushing upwards in majestic plumes, others gently bubbling like natural springs. Mughal fountains weren't just about height, they were about variety and subtle artistry. You might find a lotus-shaped fountain, or one designed to mimic a blooming flower, each droplet catching the light. One of the most characteristic and beloved features was the chatter or water chute. These were inclined slabs of marble or stone, often carved with intricate patterns like zigzags, fish scales, or scalloped designs. These chatters often led into larger pools or cascades, adding an element of dynamic movement to the otherwise tranquil scene. Imagine a miniature waterfall designed to be as aesthetically pleasing as it was functional. The symbolism of water in these gardens was multifaceted. It symbolized fertility and abundance, reflecting the divine blessings bestowed upon the emperor and his lands. And, as we've touched upon, it was a direct representation of the rivers of paradise described in the Quran, turning an earthly space into a spiritual one. The very act of carefully controlling. Historians still debate the extent to which the practical need for cooling and irrigation drove the elaborate water features versus the purely symbolic and aesthetic desires. Perhaps it's a chicken and egg situation, but the outcome was undeniably sublime. As the soothing murmur of the water channels envelops you, our journey through the Mughal gardens leads us to a crucial evolutionary step, a place where the concepts we've discussed, the Charbagh, the ingenious water systems, begin to coalesce with monumental architecture. We arrive at the Humayun's tomb garden in Delhi, a site of profound historical significance and a stunning precursor to the grandeur that would follow. This isn't just a garden with a tomb in it. It's a garden for a tomb where the architecture and the landscape are inextricably linked. Humayun, the second Mughal emperor, was Babur's son, and his tomb was commissioned by his grieving wife, Begum, almost a decade after his death in 1556. While Babur's gardens were often more utilitarian and focused on establishing the Charbagh principle, Humayun's tomb represents a significant leap forward in the integration of monumental architecture with garden design. Think of it as the first true superstar of Mughal garden architecture, setting a standard that would eventually lead to the Taj Mahal. It's like the first prototype of a luxury car that still looks pretty good even decades later. What makes Humayun's tomb garden so pivotal? It's arguably the first substantial example of the Charbagh principle being applied on such a grand scale around a royal tomb in India. The tomb itself sits majestically at the very center of a vast Charbagh, elevated on a large platform. This elevated position means you approach it from below, through the carefully designed garden, which enhances its imposing presence and spiritual significance. The pathways and water channels perfectly frame the tomb, guiding your eye towards its intricate details and serene grandeur. It's not merely a pleasant setting for a building. The garden is part of the building's narrative, a stage upon which the tomb performs its silent, eternal role. The garden's layout adheres strictly to the Charbagh pattern. 4 main water channels divide the garden into 4 primary sections, and these in turn are subdivided into smaller squares by narrower channels, creating 36 distinct quadrants. This meticulous geometry isn't just for show. It further emphasizes the idea of order, symmetry, and the concept of paradise. The water, flowing gently through these channels, eventually collects in a large pool at the base of the tomb's platform, creating shimmering reflections of the magnificent structure above. The sound of this flowing water, often almost imperceptible unless you specifically listen for it, adds to the profound sense of peace. One quirky or fringe tidbit about this garden is the sheer number of false claims and misidentifications about its design origins over the centuries. For a long time, historians attributed much of its innovation to later periods or European influences, when in fact the roots were firmly within the existing Persian and Timurid traditions, beautifully adapted and scaled up in India. It's a reminder that history sometimes gets tangled, much like a neglected rosebush, and needs careful untangling. The tomb itself is a masterpiece of early Mughal architecture, primarily built from red sandstone with white marble accents. Its double-domed structure was a pioneering feature in India and became a hallmark of later Mughal architecture, most famously echoed in the Taj Mahal. The garden, with its lush greenery, vibrant flowers, and soothing water features, creates a stark yet harmonious contrast with the warm tones of the sandstone. This blend of vivid natural beauty and monumental architectural splendor elevates the entire experience, transforming a burial site into a place of contemplation and aesthetic delight. This integration of tomb and garden was a conscious choice, reflecting the belief that the departed soul would reside in a garden-like paradise. So, the earthly garden served as a tangible link to the spiritual realm. Historians still argue whether the choice to place the tomb squarely within the Charbagh rather than at its periphery, as was common in some Persian traditions, was a deliberate Mughal innovation or a gradual evolution. Regardless, it set a powerful precedent for future Mughal imperial tomb architecture. You can almost feel the weight of history here, a gentle presence amidst the meticulously laid out paths and quietly flowing water. It's a place that invites you to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to simply be. As we softly step forward in time, leaving the serene gravitas of Humayun's tomb garden, we arrive at an era of explosive growth and consolidation for the Mughal Empire, an age that naturally brought forth further horticultural marvels. This is the reign of Akbar, the third Mughal emperor, a truly monumental figure whose expansive vision extended beyond military conquest and administrative reform to embrace the very landscapes he ruled. With Akbar, the Mughal garden tradition didn't just continue, it began to truly blossom, expanding in scope and cleverly blending the established Persian aesthetics with the rich tapestry of local Indian flora. Akbar, who ruled for nearly 50 years, was a man of immense curiosity and a keen appreciation for beauty. Unlike his grandfather Babur, who sometimes looked upon the Indian landscape with a critical eye, Akbar embraced the subcontinent, fostering a syncretic culture that blended Persian, Central Asian, and indigenous Indian elements. This openness wasn't just in art and administration. It deeply influenced his approach to garden design. He was the kind of emperor who'd probably spend his downtime poring over seed catalogs, if such things existed then, rather than invading another kingdom. Well, he did both, actually. Under Akbar, the scale of garden construction increased dramatically. His numerous building projects, including the magnificent fortresses of Agra and Lahore, and the creation of a new capital at Fatehpur Sikri were invariably accompanied by extensive garden layouts. These weren't mere afterthoughts. They were integral components of his imperial vision, designed to showcase his power, his wealth, and his refined taste. Imagine planning a capital city and thinking, right, first things first, where do we put the magnificent, soul-soothing gardens? A significant innovation during Akbar's reign was the more deliberate blending of local flora into the established Charbagh framework. While the core structural elements remained Persianate symmetry, the water channels, the division into 4 parts bars, gardeners began to experiment more with native Indian plants. This wasn't always easy, as many indigenous species didn't fit neatly into the formal geometric plantings favored by earlier Mughal gardens. But the introduction of vibrant, fragrant Indian flowers and trees added a new layer of richness and variety, creating a more harmonious dialogue between the imported aesthetic and the local environment. It was like taking a classical symphony and adding in a beautiful, exotic sitar solo. You might find roses and cypresses, staples of Persian gardens, alongside jasmine, marigolds, and mango trees, which were abundant in India. This fusion created gardens that felt both familiar to the Mughal rulers and rooted in their new home. It symbolized Akbar's broader policy of cultural integration and respect for the diverse traditions of his vast empire. He was, in many ways, the ultimate cultural unifier, and his gardens were a reflection of this grand philosophy. One quirky tidbit from Akbar's reign relates to his love for hunting. It's said he had elaborate hunting gardens constructed, sometimes incorporating small wilderness areas or specially stocked enclosures within the larger garden complexes. These weren't your typical serene charbaghs, but rather hybrid spaces where the emperor could enjoy both the thrill of the chase and the beauty of a cultivated landscape. It's a slightly jarring thought, isn't it, to imagine a peaceful garden suddenly transforming into a hunting ground. But it speaks to the multifaceted functions these grand spaces served. Another key aspect of Akbar's gardens was their sheer number and geographical spread. From the Punjab to the Deccan, wherever Akbar established his authority, gardens followed. While many of these have not survived in their original glory, historical accounts and archaeological evidence point to a flourishing of garden construction across the empire. These gardens weren't always grand imperial designs. Sometimes they were smaller, private enclosures for noblemen, mirroring the imperial style on a more modest scale. Historians still argue whether Akbar himself was as deeply involved in the design specifics of his gardens as Babur was, or if he largely delegated to his skilled architects and gardeners, setting broad principles instead. What is clear, however, is that his reign provided the stable, prosperous environment necessary for these ambitious projects to flourish. His gardens marked a transition from the foundational efforts of Babur and Humayun to the sublime artistic peaks of his successors. They laid the groundwork for the truly magnificent creations yet to come, places where every tree and every water channel would whisper tales of imperial power and serene beauty. And as you quietly drift, perhaps you can almost hear the distant, happy chatter of Akbar's gardeners, proud of their increasingly diverse botanical palettes. From the expanding green ambitions of Akbar, our journey takes a fascinating detour to one of his most ambitious, yet ultimately fleeting, creations, the gardens of Fatehpur Sikri. Imagine stepping into a ghost city, a magnificent red sandstone dream. that rose from the dust of Rajasthan, only to be largely abandoned after barely 15 years. Even in its brief, brilliant existence, Fatehpur Sikri was adorned with gardens, unique green spaces that tell a story of innovation, adaptation, and perhaps a touch of imperial impatience. Akbar commissioned Fatehpur Sikri as his new capital city in the late 16th century, near Agra. It was conceived as a testament to his power, his religious tolerance, and his architectural vision. Building an entire city from scratch in a relatively arid region presented immense challenges, not least for creating the verdant havens that were so essential to Mughal living. This wasn't a gentle riverside plain like Agra. This was a tougher landscape, demanding clever solutions for water management. The gardens of Fatehpur Sikri, therefore, are distinct. While they still adhere to the fundamental Charbagh principles of symmetry and division by water channels, their execution often had to contend with the local topography and the availability of water. Instead of vast, sprawling lawns, you might find smaller, more intimate courtyards and enclosures, each meticulously designed. The emphasis here was often on integrating the green spaces seamlessly with the residential and administrative buildings, turning every open space into a potential garden. It's like fitting a series of charming miniature golf courses into a very grand office park. One of the most notable features of Fatehpur Sikri's water supply was its elaborate system of reservoirs and aqueducts. Water was sourced from a large artificial lake, the Ainab Talao, and then lifted and distributed throughout the city, including its gardens, through a sophisticated network. This system highlights the Mughal engineers' ingenuity in overcoming environmental challenges. The gardens here might not have been as monumentally large as some later creations, but they were incredibly efficient and integrated into the daily life of the court, bringing coolness and beauty to every corner. A quirky detail often overlooked is the supposed Hiran Minor, or deer tower, which some historians believe was built by Akbar as a memorial to his favorite elephant, Hiran. While not a garden feature itself, it's surrounded by what would have been a cultivated landscape, perhaps even a hunting garden, as we discussed earlier. The presence of such unique structures hints at the personalized and sometimes whimsical nature of Akbar's various landscape projects at Fatehpur Sikri, moving beyond purely symbolic charbaghs to more functional or commemorative green spaces. The brief life of Fatehpur Sikri as a capital meant that its gardens, though exquisitely planned, never fully matured or saw the same continuous refinement as those in more permanent Mughal strongholds. This gives them a unique character, snapshot of Mughal garden design in a specific, challenging context. They show an adaptability, a willingness to innovate within the established framework, rather than simply replicating grander designs elsewhere. You can almost feel the fresh ambition of a new capital trying to establish its own identity through its green spaces. Historians still argue whether the ultimate abandonment of Fatehpur Sikri was solely due to water scarcity, or if political and strategic factors played a more significant role. Regardless of the reason, the gardens, like the city itself, represent a fascinating, albeit temporary, peak in Mughal architectural and landscape innovation. They are a testament to Akbar's audacious vision, even if that vision eventually shifted. As you imagine these fleeting paradises, try to picture the silence that would have fallen over them as the court packed up and moved on, leaving these carefully cultivated spaces to the whispers of the wind and the changing seasons. A grand experiment left to sleep. From the ambitious yet perhaps slightly ephemeral, gardens of Fatehpur Sikri. Our narrative drifts northward, following the whispers of history, to a region synonymous with breathtaking natural beauty and poetic inspiration, Kashmir. Here, under the watchful eye of Jahangir, the fourth Mughal emperor, the art of garden design found new expression, adapting itself to the unique topography and climate of this verdant valley. This is where the famous Shalimar Bagh and Nishat Bagh truly come to life, embodying a different kind of serene grandeur. Jahangir, who succeeded his father Akbar, was a connoisseur of art, a lover of nature, and by all accounts, somewhat less interested in military conquest than his predecessors. He had a deep, almost spiritual connection to the natural world, and he adored Kashmir. He famously said, "If there is a paradise on earth, it is this, it is this, it is this." And what better way to enhance paradise than to build more gardens? His autobiography, the Tu Saka Jahangir, is filled with his observations on flora, fauna, and the beauty of Kashmir, painting a picture of an emperor who delighted in the subtler aspects of nature. He sounds like the kind of guy who'd appreciate a perfectly brewed cup of tea while admiring a new bloom, rather than orchestrating a siege. The gardens he commissioned in Kashmir, particularly the Shalimar Bagh and Nishat Bagh, depart somewhat from the strictly flat riverine Charbagh model seen in the plains. Kashmir's undulating terrain, with its sloping hillsides and natural springs, encouraged a terraced garden design. Imagine a series of green carpets laid out on a gentle incline, each level revealing new vistas and features as you ascend or descend. This terraced approach wasn't new in garden design globally, but its application on this scale and with such Mughal refinement was a magnificent evolution. Shalimar Bagh, meaning abode of love or garden of light, was built by Jahangir for his beloved wife, Nur Jahan, in 1619. It's a classic example of a terraced Mughal garden, laid out in three main sections, each with its own purpose and level of access. The lowest terrace, the public garden, would have been accessible to the common man, allowing a glimpse of imperial splendor. The next, a garden for the emperor and his nobles, offered more exclusivity. And finally, at the top, was the Zenana Garden, a private space reserved for the empress and the royal ladies. This clever layering of access is a subtle but fascinating social commentary built right into the landscape. Water, as always, is the soul of Shalimar Bagh, fed by a canal from the nearby Harwan stream. Water flows down through the terraces in a series of cascades, fountains, and pools. The central water channel, the Shah Nahar, runs like a shimmering spine through the garden, connecting the different levels and creating a continuous, soothing murmur. Imagine dozens of small waterfalls, each with its own gentle splash, combining to create a symphony of watery sounds. It's like nature's own white noise machine, perfectly calibrated for calm. Nishat Bagh, or Garden of Joy, also located in Srinagar, was built a few years later by Asaf Khan, Nur Jahan's brother, who was a high official in Jahangir's court. It's even grander than Shalimar, with 12 terraces representing the 12 signs of the zodiac, or perhaps the 12 months of the year. This garden faces the Dal Lake, offering breathtaking views that integrate the natural landscape of the lake and mountains directly into the garden's aesthetic. You can almost feel the cool breeze coming off the water as you imagine strolling through its levels. One quirky tidbit about Nishat Bagh is the legend that Shah Jahan, Jahangir's successor, was so envious of its beauty that he once cut off its water supply. Asaf Khan, heartbroken, made no complaint. It was only when a servant bravely turned the water back on that Shah Jahan relented, realizing the true artistry. Whether this tale is entirely accurate is debated, but it highlights the immense value and emotional attachment rulers had to these green paradises. The Kashmir gardens are distinct for their integration with the surrounding natural beauty. Unlike the gardens of the plains, which created an enclosed oasis, these terraced gardens often opened up to stunning vistas of mountains and lakes, blurring the line between the cultivated and the wild. Historians still argue whether this open aspect was a conscious shift in Mughal design philosophy or simply an ingenious adaptation to the unique Kashmiri landscape. Whatever the precise reason, the result is undeniably one of sublime beauty, a testament to Jahangir's love for Kashmir and the enduring appeal of these serene, watery retreats. As the cool mountain air of Kashmir gently fades, replaced by the warm, perfumed breezes of the Mughal heartland, our narrative weaves its way towards a figure of immense influence, often overshadowed by the male emperors, but whose aesthetic sensibilities left an indelible mark on the empire's grandest gardens. Nur Jahan, wife of Emperor Jahangir. Nur Jahan was no ordinary empress. She was a formidable intellect, a shrewd politician, and a connoisseur of beauty, with an exquisite and sophisticated touch that elevated garden design to new heights. Imagine an empress not just commissioning gardens, but actively involving herself in their layout, choosing the plants, and overseeing the intricate details. Nur Jahan was precisely that kind of visionary. Her name, meaning light of the world, certainly befitted her illuminating influence on Mughal culture and architecture. While Jahangir loved nature, Nur Jahan possessed a refined artistic sensibility that translated into a more delicate and nuanced approach to garden aesthetics. She wasn't just about grand scale. She was about subtle elegance, intricate detail, and the perfect harmony of elements. It's widely believed that Nur Jahan played a significant role in the design and patronage of several key gardens, including the aforementioned Shalimar Bagh in Kashmir, which Jahangir famously built for her. Her involvement would have extended to the selection of rare plants, the design of marble pavilions, and the overall aesthetic refinement that made these spaces truly enchanting. Think of her as the ultimate interior designer, but for entire outdoor landscapes, ensuring every fountain gurgled just right and every flower bloomed in its designated spot. Her influence is often credited with introducing a greater emphasis on soft, flowing lines in some garden elements, a slight departure from the rigid geometric precision without abandoning the fundamental Charbagh structure. You might find more curvilinear pools or subtle undulations in flower beds, adding a layer of organic grace to the classical symmetry. This gentle softening of lines contributed to the overall sense of relaxation and natural beauty that characterized the zenith of Mughal gardens. One particularly significant garden associated with Nur Jahan's direct patronage is the tomb of Itmad-Dudallah in Agra, which houses the remains of her father, Mirza Ghiyas Beg. This exquisite tomb, often referred to as the Baby Taj due to its delicate marble inlay work, is surrounded by a perfectly proportioned Charbagh garden. While not as vast as some imperial gardens, its perfection in scale and intricate details within the garden layout showcases a refined taste that many attribute to Nur Jahan's influence. The garden here serves as a serene prelude to the tomb, its delicate beauty mirroring the tomb's own intricate craftsmanship, It's like a beautifully wrapped gift, where the wrapping itself is a work of art. The use of white marble, delicate petra dura, and exquisitely detailed latticework in the pavilions and garden structures became more prominent during her time, adding a layer of luminous sophistication to the garden landscape. These elements reflected light, created intricate shadow patterns, and elevated the tactile experience of being within the garden. Imagine the delicate interplay of light and shadow on a carved marble screen, filtering the sun's harsh rays into a soft, dappled glow. A quirky or fringe tidbit about Nur Jahan's passion for flowers is her supposed role in popularizing specific varieties within the Mughal gardens, particularly certain types of roses and irises, which were cherished for their beauty and fragrance. She was known to be keenly interested in horticulture and perhaps even experimented with hybridizing plants, though documented evidence is scarce. It's a lovely thought, isn't it, of an empress personally tending to her favorite blooms, rather than just admiring them from afar. Historians still argue whether Nur Jahan's extensive political power genuinely extended to such meticulous artistic oversight of gardens, or if her influence was more in patronizing the arts and setting a general tone of refined elegance for the court. What is undeniable, however, is that during her time, Mughal garden design reached an unparalleled level of sophisticated beauty, blending natural splendor with architectural grace in a way that truly soothed the soul. Her legacy is literally etched in stone and planted in the earth, a testament to an empress who brought a gentle yet powerful touch to the imperial landscape. From the refined elegance introduced by Nur Jahan, our journey now arrives at the absolute zenith of Mughal architectural and garden splendor, a period synonymous with breathtaking grandeur and arguably the most famous garden tomb complex in the world. We are, of course, talking about the reign of Shah Jahan, the fifth Mughal emperor, whose name literally means king of the world. This is where the concepts of Charbagh waters, soul, and integrated architecture culminate in the unparalleled majesty of the Taj Mahal gardens. Shah Jahan's reign is often regarded as the golden age of Mughal architecture. He was an obsessive builder, a patron of the arts, with an almost limitless budget, and a man deeply affected by personal loss. His profound grief over the death of his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, led him to commission the Taj Mahal, not just a tomb, but a timeless monument to eternal love. And crucially, integral to this monument is its garden, a perfect, serene setting that frames and enhances the tomb's ethereal beauty. The gardens of the Taj Mahal are the quintessential example of the Mughal Charbagh at its most refined and perfect. Imagine standing at the main gate, the colossal Darwaza-i-Rawza, and gazing upon the entire breathtaking vista. The Taj Mahal itself is not in the center of the garden, as was the case with Humayun's tomb, but rather positioned at the northern end, overlooking the Yamuna River. This positioning allows the garden to unfold before you, drawing your eye towards the tomb, creating a powerful sense of progression and unveiling. It's like a perfectly composed opera, where the grand crescendo is the marble mausoleum itself, and the garden is the magnificent overture. The Charbagh here is flawlessly symmetrical, divided by raised pathways and two central water channels that reflect the main mausoleum. These channels are fed by a sophisticated hydraulic system that brought water from the Yamuna River, lifting it via a series of Persian wheels and channeling it through underground pipes. The sheer engineering required to maintain this constant flow, especially for the numerous fountains, was a monumental undertaking. The sound of these fountains, gently bubbling or gracefully arcing, combined with the whispers of the wind through the cypress trees, was designed to create an ambience of profound peace and sanctity. The garden is not merely a decorative foreground, it is deeply symbolic. The four rivers of paradise are vividly represented by the water channels. The pathways, often lined with cypress trees and flowering fruit trees, guide you through this earthly paradise. The beds were originally planted with a vibrant array of flowering plants, contrasting with the stark white marble of the tomb, creating a dynamic visual interplay between life and monumentality. Historians still argue about the precise original planting scheme of the Taj Mahal garden, whether it was dominated by single species or a more diverse, changing array of blooms, but its overall lushness and symbolism are undeniable. One particularly poignant and quirky tidbit about the Taj Mahal garden is the presence of an ingenious optical illusion designed into the main gate. As you walk closer to the gate, the Taj Mahal appears to grow larger, but as you walk away from it through the garden, it appears to shrink. This subtle visual trick enhances the feeling of awe and wonder, making the grand mausoleum feel almost alive, responsive to your presence. It's a clever little wink from the ancient architects, ensuring your senses are engaged even as you're lulled by the peaceful surroundings. The material choices in the garden also reflect Shah Jahan's preference for lavishness. White marble, intricately carved and inlaid with semi-precious stones, was used extensively for fountains, pools, and pavilions, adding a luminous quality to the landscape. This was a step beyond the red sandstone of earlier periods, signifying a new level of imperial wealth and artistic ambition. Every element, from the perfectly manicured lawns to the gleaming marble structures, speaks of absolute perfection and profound devotion. The Taj Mahal garden isn't just a beautiful space. It's a profound statement about life, death, and the promise of paradise. It invites you to slow down, to walk its paths with respect, and to absorb the timeless beauty that reflects both human ingenuity and spiritual aspiration. As you imagine yourself there, let the hushed grandeur of its design cradle you, a gentle embrace from centuries past. Having lingered in the ethereal beauty of the Taj Mahal gardens, we now shift our focus slightly west to the bustling heart of the Mughal Empire in its later glory. Our next imagined destination is the Red Fort Gardens in Delhi. Here, within the formidable red sandstone walls, lie pleasure grounds that reflect imperial leisure and ceremonial splendor. The Red Fort, or Lal Kila, was commissioned by Shah Jahan in 1639. Unlike the serene, symmetrical Charbaghs surrounding a tomb, the gardens within the Red Fort were designed for active use, for royal promenades, formal audiences, private retreats, and lavish entertainments. Imagine hosting a state dinner, not in a grand ballroom, but amidst fragrant rose gardens, with fountains softly playing in the background. Much more impressive, wouldn't you agree? The fort contains several distinct garden areas, each with its own character and purpose. Though all united by the signature Mughal style of order and water integration, the most prominent are the Hayat Bakhsh Bagh and the Madabogh. These gardens, while still adhering to the Charbagh layout in their basic structure, were often more elongated or adapted to fit within the confines of the fort walls. The Hayat Bakhsh Bagh, once a vibrant Charbagh, featured numerous pavilions, fountains, and pools. Water from the Yamuna River was diverted and ingeniously lifted to supply these features, creating a cool and refreshing environment even in the Delhi heat. Within this garden, two specific pavilions, the Zafar Mahal and the Moti Masjid, added architectural grandeur, stood in the middle of a large tank surrounded by water, creating a stunning visual effect and a wonderfully cool retreat. It's like having your own private island getaway, but in the middle of an imperial garden. The Mata Bagh was designed for moonlit strolls and nocturnal contemplation. It would have emphasized fragrant night-blooming flowers like jasmine and tuberose, and perhaps plants with silvery foliage, all designed to shimmer and release their perfume under the pale moonlight. Imagine the serene atmosphere, the air heavy with scent, the soft reflections on the water as the emperor walked beneath the stars, away from the day's political machinations. One interesting and perhaps slightly quirky tidbit about the Red Fort Gardens is the existence of the Rang Mahal, or Palace of Colors. While primarily a residential structure, its central fountain hall was reportedly designed to have water flowing over a silver ceiling, creating an effect of falling rain, and was illuminated by colored lamps. Though not strictly a garden feature, it speaks to the Mughal obsession with water, light, and creating immersive sensory experiences that blurred the lines between interior and exterior spaces. The overall design philosophy of the Red Fort Gardens was to create a succession of delightful experiences as one moved through the imperial complex, from grand public spaces to intimate private retreats. Each garden served a specific function while maintaining the overarching aesthetic of ordered paradise. These gardens were witnesses to centuries of Mughal history, celebrations, coronations, and even the eventual decline of the empire. Historians still argue about the extent to which later modifications by the British, particularly after the 1857 rebellion, altered the original character of the Red Fort Gardens. Many areas were converted into barracks or cleared for defensive purposes, leaving only fragments of their former glory. However, efforts have been made to restore parts of these gardens, giving us a glimpse into the imperial pleasure grounds that once flourished within these formidable walls. They remind us that even within a fortress designed for protection, the mules prioritized beauty, tranquility, and the profound human need for green living spaces. Our gentle journey across the Mughal Empire's green canvases now takes us further west, away from the familiar splendor of Delhi, to a city that held immense strategic and cultural importance, Lahore, in present-day Pakistan. Here, nestled within another formidable Mughal stronghold, the Lahore Fort Gardens stand as serene oases, demonstrating the empire's consistent dedication to creating beauty even within a military bastion. Most notably, Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan. Each ruler left their indelible mark on its architecture and, crucially, its garden landscapes. These gardens weren't merely functional, they were integral components of the imperial court's daily life, providing cool retreats, venues for state functions, and spaces for quiet contemplation. Imagine planning an invasion, then stepping out into a perfectly manicured garden to clear your head. Very civilized, indeed. The Lahore Fort houses several beautiful courtyards and garden areas, showcasing a progression of Mughal garden design. Among the most celebrated is the Shish Mahal courtyard, also known as the Palace of Mirrors. While not a garden in the traditional sense of vast Charbagh plots, creating an intimate, jewel-like garden experience. designed to shimmer and sparkle, reflecting light and creating an illusion of boundless space and glittering beauty. Imagine thousands of tiny mirrors reflecting the soft light of lamps or the moon. It would have been truly mesmerizing, like stepping into a private, crystalline paradise. Another significant area is the Hathipal, or Elephant Gate, which leads into various courtyards that would have once been lush with greenery and water channels. The design philosophy here, much like in the Red Fort, was to integrate green spaces within the architectural fabric, creating a seamless flow between indoor and outdoor living. You wouldn't just pass through a garden, you would live within it. The Duania Am Courtyard. While primarily an open space for state affairs, imagine diplomatic negotiations taking place with the scent of roses wafting through the air. A subtle way to ease tensions, perhaps. A quirky historical tidbit about the Lahore Fort Gardens is the story of the picture wall. This magnificent, enormous wall, stretching hundreds of meters, is adorned with vibrant glazed tile work depicting scenes of court life, hunting, and mythical creatures. While not a garden itself, its themes often include garden vistas and lively animal scenes, offering a visual record of the kinds of flora and fauna that captivated the imperial imagination and possibly existed within their actual gardens. It's like a giant, very expensive outdoor mural, giving you a sneak peek into their world. Water supply to the Lahore Fort Gardens was, as always, a marvel of engineering and irrigation systems. The sound of water, a constant gentle presence, would have provided a soothing backdrop to imperial life, contrasting with the solid, defensive walls. Historians still argue about the exact original extent and detailed planting schemes of many of the Lahore Fort Gardens, given the successive layers of additions, renovations, and unfortunately, periods of neglect and alteration, particularly during later Sikh and British rule. However, archaeological excavations and historical accounts continue to reveal tantalizing clues about their former glory, helping us reconstruct the serene beauty that once flourished behind these mighty walls. The Lahore Fort Gardens stand as a testament to the Mughal commitment to integrating nature and art, even in their most formidable urban strongholds, providing silent green havens for emperors and their courts to find peace amidst the demands of empire. Having explored the grand imperial gardens, both monumental and fortress-bound, our serene journey through the Mughal green tapestry now turns its gaze to the wider world that mirrored, however modestly, the grandeur of the emperors. We're venturing beyond royalty into the hidden courtyards and blossoming plots of nobles, courtiers, and even glimpses of the more aspirational commoners. These smaller, often forgotten, gardens were echoes of paradise, miniature reflections of imperial splendor, bringing tranquility to a broader segment of Mughal society. While the imperial gardens we've discussed were built on a colossal scale with limitless resources, the principles of Mughal garden design symmetry, water, and order were incredibly influential and permeated down through the social strata. If you were a wealthy noble, a high-ranking official, or even a prosperous merchant, you absolutely would have aspired to have your own garden, a private oasis to escape the dusty streets and the clamor of daily life. These were often more intimate spaces, perhaps just a single Charbagh courtyard within a grand haveli, but their essence was the same. Imagine stepping from the narrow, bustling lanes of a Mughal city into a private courtyard. Suddenly, the cacophony fades, replaced by the gentle murmur of a small fountain, the rustle of leaves, and the sweet scent of jasmine. These smaller gardens might not have had grand canals or elaborate chatters, but they would have featured elegant marble pools, potted plants, and perhaps a small enclosed Charbagh with fruit trees and fragrant herbs. They were designed for personal enjoyment, for reading poetry, for quiet conversations, or simply for finding a moment of cool respite from the Indian sun. It's like discovering a secret garden right in the middle of a busy city block, a little slice of heaven just for you. Many of these nobles' gardens were built along the banks of rivers, much like the imperial ones, utilizing natural slopes and water sources. Some of the best surviving examples, though often altered over time, can be found in places like Lahore and Agra, near the imperial residences, as nobles sought to emulate the royal court. These gardens served not just as private retreats, but also as places for entertaining guests, showcasing the owner's wealth and refined taste. A well-maintained garden was a mark of status, much like a fancy car or a sprawling estate today, but perhaps with a more profound sense of quiet beauty. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the concept of pleasure barges, or garden boats used on the Yamuna and other rivers. While not strictly gardens themselves, these elaborately decorated boats would often feature potted plants, small fountains, and comfortable seating, essentially creating mobile gardens for river excursions. Imagine drifting down a river on a perfumed floating garden, serenaded by musicians. It's a level of leisurely luxury that sounds utterly divine, almost too relaxing to be true. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, but it certainly speaks to the Mughal desire to infuse every aspect of their lives with beauty and tranquility. Citrus and pomegranate. The idea was to create a sensory paradise that engaged sight, smell, and even taste. You could pluck a fresh mango directly from the tree, or inhale the perfume of a blooming rose as you strolled. While precise records for most of these private gardens are scarce compared to the imperial ones, their existence and influence are undeniable. They spread the Mughal garden aesthetic beyond the confines of the emperor's court, making it a more widespread cultural phenomenon. They allowed more people to experience a slice of that idealized paradise, even if on a smaller, more intimate scale. As you imagine these more personal green havens, you can almost hear the whispered stories and quiet laughter that once filled their spaces, testament to the enduring human desire for beauty and peace. With the gentle rustle of leaves still echoing from the private courtyards, let's now turn our attention to the very fabric of these Mughal paradises, the flora and fauna that breathed life and color into their meticulously designed spaces. These gardens weren't just about elegant layouts and flowing water. They were living ecosystems, carefully curated to delight the senses and reflect a profound appreciation for nature's bounty. When you imagine a Mughal garden, don't just picture manicured lawns. Envision a vibrant tapestry of plant life. The selection of plants was far from arbitrary. It was based on fragrance, color, form, and symbolism. The most quintessential trees were the cypress, with its dark columnar form, symbolizing eternity, death, and nobility. A stately, silent sentinel, often used along pathways or at corners of Charbagh quadrants. It provided a powerful vertical element, contrasting beautifully with the horizontal lines of the water channels. Alongside them, you'd find fruit-bearing trees like mango, citrus, and occasionally even date palms, symbolizing prosperity and the bounty of paradise. Imagine reaching out and plucking a ripe, juicy mango from a tree, its sweetness bursting in your mouth as you wander. Flowering plants were chosen for their vibrant colors and intoxicating perfumes. Roses, in particular, were highly prized, not just for their beauty, but for their use in making rosewater and other fragrant essences. Imagine the air, especially in the evening, heavy with the sweet, intoxicating scent of hundreds of blooming roses. Other favorites included jasmine, narcissus, iris, lilies, and marigolds. These weren't just scattered randomly. They were planted in beds, often in intricate geometric patterns, creating living carpets of color and scent. Sometimes, even the colors were carefully considered, with specific beds dedicated to red blooms or white ones, creating a visual symphony. Herbs were also common, not just for culinary or medicinal purposes, but for their aromatic qualities. Mint, basil, and various spices would have contributed to the complex fragrance profile of the garden. It was a sensory overload in the most delightful way, designed to soothe and invigorate simultaneously. You could practically taste the air with all the delightful scents mingling around you. But what about the fauna? While grand imperial gardens often had dedicated hunting preserves nearby, the gardens themselves weren't typically filled with large, wild animals. Instead, they were designed to attract and support smaller, often more delicate creatures. Birds, in particular, were highly cherished. Imagine the cheerful chirping and singing of numerous species. Peacocks strutting with their magnificent tails, parrots flitting between trees, and a variety of smaller songbirds adding their melodic chorus to the gentle sounds of water. Aviaries were sometimes incorporated into the garden design, housing exotic birds from far-flung regions, adding to the spectacle. Fish were also an important part of the aquatic features. Large pools would often be stocked with colorful fish, providing a lively, shimmering presence in the water. Imagine leaning over a marble basin, watching the graceful movements of carp or other species, their scales glinting in the sunlight. It added a dynamic, living element to the still reflections. Occasionally, even smaller, domesticated animals like deer might have been allowed to roam in larger, less formal sections of the gardens, adding to the idyllic, paradisiacal atmosphere. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the historical debate about the actual species of flowers cultivated. While we know the common types, exact botanical identification from historical texts and paintings can be tricky. Some scholars suggest that certain hybrid varieties, or perhaps even lost species, might have been cultivated then. Historians still argue whether the mules were truly pioneers in horticulture and plant breeding, or if they simply perfected the art of displaying existing species. What is certain is their profound knowledge of and appreciation for the natural world. The careful selection and arrangement of both flora and fauna were integral to the Mughal garden's purpose, to create a comprehensive, immersive experience of paradise on earth. Every bloom, every rustle of leaves, every splash of water, and every bird's song contributed to an environment designed for ultimate relaxation and spiritual contemplation. It was a masterpiece of biodesign, centuries before the term was ever conceived, crafted to lull the senses into a state of blissful serenity. Building upon the vibrant tapestry of flora and fauna, let's now allow our senses to be utterly enveloped by one of the most enchanting, yet often understated, features of the Mughal garden: its aromatic wonders. These weren't just gardens for the eyes. They were meticulously crafted olfactory experiences, where the air itself was a symphony of delicate and intoxicating perfumes. The importance of scented flowers and herbs was paramount, designed to create an immersive, soothing atmosphere that would truly transport you. Imagine stepping into a Mughal garden, especially during the cool hours of dawn or dusk. The air is not merely fresh, it's thick with the layered scents of countless blooms. This wasn't accidental. Gardeners would strategically plant specific varieties to ensure a continuous succession of fragrances throughout the day and across the seasons. The aim was to create a living diffuser, subtly perfuming the entire space. It's like having a natural aromatherapy session every time you stepped outside, but on a grand, imperial scale. Roses, as we touched upon, were absolute royalty in the Mughal garden. Not just any roses, but highly fragrant varieties cultivated for their intense, rich scent. They were grown in abundance, often in large beds or climbing over trellises. Their petals gathered to make rosewater, a prized ingredient in cuisine, perfumes, and even medicines. Imagine the sheer volume of rose perfume that would have wafted through the garden on a warm evening, a truly intoxicating experience. Jasmine, with its delicate white blossoms and incredibly sweet, heady scent, was another favorite. Often planted near pavilions or walkways, its perfume would be particularly potent in the evening, inviting quiet reflection. Then there were the narcissus, with their pure, clean fragrance, and various lilies, contributing their own unique notes. The variety of these floral perfumes created a complex bouquet, never overwhelming, but always present, a constant, gentle reminder of the garden's beauty. Beyond flowers, aromatic herbs played a significant role. Mint, basil, and various forms of cypresses and juniper would have contributed earthy, resinous, or fresh notes to the overall fragrance profile. These weren't just for their scent. Many had medicinal or culinary uses, blending utility with beauty. Imagine brushing past a patch of fragrant herbs, releasing their invigorating aroma as you walk. It was a subtle, interactive element that engaged yet another sense. One quirky or fringe tidbit about the aromatic qualities of these gardens involves the use of itters, or natural perfumes. Mughal emperors and empresses were known to be avid users and patrons of perfumers, and the gardens themselves served as living laboratories for cultivating the very flowers from which these precious oils were extracted. Some accounts even suggest that special pavilions were built where flower petals would be left to release their fragrance, or where scented smoke would be gently diffused, enhancing the garden's natural aromas. Historians still argue whether the complexity of these cultivated perfumes rivaled that of modern perfumery, but their sheer dedication to scent is clear. The arrangement of these fragrant plants was often deliberate. You might find stronger, more vibrant scents near entrances or central gathering points, gradually softening into more subtle, contemplative aromas in quieter, more secluded areas. This was a choreographed sensory journey, guiding your experience through the garden not just by sight, but by scent. The air itself became a part of the immersive landscape, a silent, pervasive presence designed to calm the mind and soothe the soul. For the mules, these aromatic gardens were more than just pleasant spaces. They were a manifestation of paradise, where every sense was indulged in a harmonious and gentle way. The constant, subtle diffusion of natural perfumes contributed immensely to the relaxing, almost meditative quality of these spaces, designed to help one unwind and drift into a state of blissful tranquility. So, as you continue to imagine your presence in this historical dream, let the phantom scents of roses, jasmine, and cypress gently wash over you, pulling you deeper into slumber. As the fragrant air of the Mughal gardens gently enfolds you, our journey now invites you to witness their dynamic beauty through the lens of time itself. Their seasonal transformations. These gardens were not static masterpieces. They were living, breathing entities, constantly changing and evolving with the rhythm of the Indian year. Understanding these shifts reveals another layer of the mule's profound connection to nature and their sophisticated approach to garden design. Imagine a Mughal garden not just in one glorious snapshot, but through the cycle of spring, summer, monsoon, and winter. Each season brought its own palette of colors, its unique symphony of sounds, and its distinct array of scents. The gardeners, those unsung heroes, worked tirelessly to ensure that there was always something new to behold, always a fresh reason to stroll through the serene pathways. It's like having a dozen different art exhibitions in the same gallery, constantly refreshing the visual and sensory experience. Let's begin with spring, often considered the most vibrant season. After the cooler, often dry winter months, the arrival of spring would have brought an explosion of color and fragrance. This was the time for roses to burst forth in their full glory, for delicate irises and narcissus to bloom, and for fruit trees like mangoes and pomegranates to blossom, promising future harvests. The air would be filled with the buzzing of bees and the cheerful chirping of birds, celebrating the renewal of life. Imagine walking through avenues of blossoming trees, their petals gently falling like confetti onto the pathways. It would have been a truly joyous time, a natural celebration of abundance. Then came the intense heat of summer. This was when the cooling properties of the garden's design became paramount. The deep shade provided by mature trees, the constant flow of water in channels and fountains, and the strategically placed pavilions offered crucial respite from the oppressive sun. While many spring flowers would have faded, more heat-tolerant species might have come into their own, and the focus would shift to the lushness of the foliage and the refreshing qualities of water. This was the time for leisurely afternoons spent in shaded marble kiosks, listening to the gentle gurgle of fountains, perhaps enjoying a cool drink infused with rosewater. The arrival of the monsoon, often heralded by dramatic thunderstorms, would have transformed the gardens once more. The parched earth would drink deeply, and the entire landscape would seem to sigh with relief. The vibrant greens would become even more intense, and certain plants, adapted to the heavy rains, would flourish. The sound of rain falling on leaves, pooling in channels, and swelling the fountains would have added a new, powerful dimension to the garden's soundscape. While perhaps less about delicate fragrance, it would have been a time of profound sensory immersion in the raw power and refreshing quality of nature. It's like the garden took a deep, cleansing breath, washing away the dust of summer. Finally, winter would bring a cooler, quieter beauty. While much of India doesn't experience harsh winters like some European climates, the cooler months would have meant a different range of blooms, perhaps more subtle scents, and a greater emphasis on the evergreen trees and the architectural elements of the garden. The crisp air might have carried the scent of wood smoke from nearby hearths, mingling with the faint perfume of late-blooming flowers. The calm of winter would have offered a perfect setting for quiet walks and contemplation. a serene reflection of the year's cycle. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the anecdotal evidence suggesting that some Mughal emperors had specific garden sections designed to highlight certain seasonal changes, almost like living calendars. While a grand claim, it certainly speaks to their meticulous planning and deep desire to experience nature's full cycle within their private paradises. Historians still argue about the extent to which Mughal gardeners actively managed year-round bloom cycles versus simply adapting to natural seasonal variations. What is clear, however, is that the gardens were cherished for their ability to evolve and present new delights with each turn of the calendar. As you imagine these continuous transformations, feel the gentle shift of seasons within this timeless green dream, with the soft, imagined light of changing seasons still illuminating our path. Let's now turn our gaze to the delicate architectural jewels nestled within these verdant landscapes. The garden pavilions. These weren't mere garden sheds. They were exquisitely designed structures, integral to the overall aesthetic and purpose of the Mughal garden, serving as quiet spaces for contemplation, poetry, and a blissful escape from the elements. Imagine yourself strolling through a Charbagh, the sun perhaps a little too warm, and then spotting a cool, inviting structure at the end of a long water channel. This would be a baradari, a pavilion typically with 12 open arches, allowing breezes to flow freely through, offering both shade and unobstructed views of the surrounding garden. These pavilions were designed to blur the line between indoor and outdoor, allowing you to be in the garden even when sheltered from the sun or a light rain shower. It's like having the perfect open-air living room, but with much better landscaping and a constant supply of fresh, perfumed air. These pavilions were usually constructed from white marble or red sandstone, often intricately carved with floral motifs or geometric patterns that mirrored the garden's own designs. Their placement was always strategic, often at the intersection of water channels, at the end of a grand axis, or overlooking a particularly beautiful vista or a large pool. This ensured that whether you were inside or outside, your view was always a curated masterpiece. The sound of water would often be at its most prominent here, with fountains either within the pavilion itself or just outside its arches, enhancing the sense of cool tranquility. Beyond the baradari, there were other types of pavilions, each serving a slightly different function. Some were smaller, more intimate kiosks for solitary reflection. Others were larger, grander structures, perhaps with attached chambers, designed for more extended stays. Overnight retreats, or small, private gatherings. These larger pavilions might have featured elaborate frescoes, delicate Petra dura inlay work, and even marble screens that filtered the light into mesmerizing patterns on the floor. Imagine reading a book or writing poetry in a space where every beam of sunlight is transformed into a dancing artwork. The primary purpose of these pavilions was to offer comfort and sensory delight. They were places to escape the heat, to enjoy the garden's beauty from a relaxed vantage point, and to indulge in intellectual and artistic pursuits. Poets would recite verses, musicians would play soothing melodies, and emperors would conduct private meetings, all within the calming embrace of the garden. They were truly multifunctional spaces designed for both leisure and serious contemplation. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the historical debate about the original furnishings of these pavilions. While we know they were places of comfort, Historians still argue about the exact types of luxurious textiles, cushions, and low-lying furniture that would have adorned them. Were they minimalistic, letting the architecture and natural views dominate? Or were they lavishly appointed with silks and brocades? It's a delightful mystery that allows your imagination to furnish them as you please, perhaps with plush cushions to lean back on as you drift off. These pavilions weren't just structures, they were integral components of the garden's narrative, inviting interaction and providing focal points within the vast green expanse. They symbolized the Mughal ideal of harmonious living, where the human-made and the natural seamlessly intertwined. Historians still argue whether the Baradari concept originated purely within Mughal India, or if it had deeper roots in earlier Persian or Central Asian traditions. Regardless, their perfection within the Mughal context is undeniable. As you picture yourself lounging in one of these airy, elegant pavilions, feeling the gentle breeze and hearing the distant murmur of water, you can almost feel the centuries of serenity seep into your bones, a perfect prelude to a peaceful slumber. As the quiet calm of the garden pavilions settles around you, let's now peer through another fascinating window into the world of Mughal gardens. Their artistic depictions. These aren't just pretty pictures. Mughal miniature paintings served as far more than mere illustrations. They acted as vivid historical records, offering us tantalizing glimpses into the original layouts, planting schemes, and the vibrant life that once animated these magnificent green spaces. Think of them as exquisitely detailed photographs from centuries ago, painstakingly rendered by hand. Mughal miniature painting flourished from the 16th to the 19th centuries, evolving from Persian traditions, but developing a distinct Indian style. These paintings are renowned for their incredible detail, vibrant colors, and their ability to capture complex narratives within a small frame. And frequently, the backdrop for these narratives, whether depicting imperial darbars, hunting scenes, or intimate royal gatherings, was a meticulously rendered garden. You'll often find emperors and empresses lounging by fountains, strolling along water channels, or enjoying music in pavilions, all set within a garden that feels both idealized and strikingly real. These paintings provide invaluable clues for historians and restorers, because so many of the original Mughal gardens have either been lost, heavily altered, or only partially restored. These artistic representations often serve as the most comprehensive blueprints we have. You can see the precise arrangement of Charbagh quadrants, the flow of water channels, the types of trees planted along avenues, and even the varieties of flowers in the beds. Imagine trying to restore a lost masterpiece, and then discovering a highly detailed painting showing you exactly how it looked. That's the power of these miniatures. For instance, many paintings depict gardens with mature cypress trees symmetrically lining watercourses, and flowering fruit trees like mango or citrus filling the quadrants. They show elegant marble pavilions perfectly positioned, and often even specific types of birds and animals inhabiting the garden space. The precision is astonishing. You can almost count the petals on a painted rose or trace the intricate patterns on a marble chatter, all rendered in exquisite miniature scale. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the phenomenon of composite animal paintings, where multiple figures or animals are arranged to form the outline of a larger animal, often set within a garden landscape. Historians still argue whether some of the more fantastical garden elements depicted in certain miniatures, like trees bearing improbable fruits or flowers, were purely symbolic or perhaps exaggerated reflections of horticultural experiments. It's a delightful thought, isn't it, of an emperor demanding a tree that grows solid gold fruit. Beyond their informational value, these paintings also convey the feeling of being in a Mughal garden. The serene expressions of the figures, the gentle poses, and the meticulous attention to the calming details of the landscape all suggest that these gardens were indeed places of profound peace and contemplative beauty. They were environments where one could escape the demands of the world and find solace, much like you're doing now, listening to this gentle narration. The artists who created these miniatures were often part of imperial ateliers, directly patronized by the emperors themselves. This meant they had direct access to the gardens and were encouraged to depict them with accuracy and artistic flair. So, as you picture these forgotten gardens, let the vibrant colors and intricate details of a Mughal miniature painting fill your mind's eye. See the emperors and empresses, the nobles and poets, strolling through those hallowed grounds. These artistic records allow us to reconstruct a vanished world. A world where every planted seed and every flowing drop of water was part of a grand, beautiful vision designed to bring calm and beauty to even the busiest of imperial lives. Having admired the miniature masterpieces that illustrate these historical gardens, let us now pause to acknowledge the unsung heroes, the quiet architects of tranquility, the gardeners' lives. These were the devoted individuals who, day in and day out, without these meticulous hands, these grand green dreams would have quickly faded into dust. Imagine the sheer scale of the task. These were not small backyard plots. We're talking about vast, sprawling complexes, often spanning acres, with thousands of trees, countless flower beds, intricate water channels, and numerous fountains. Planting, pruning, and, most importantly, managing the complex water systems. Perhaps hand-watering delicate blooms or clearing blockages in the channels. During the monsoon, their focus would shift to managing drainage, preventing erosion, and protecting vulnerable plants from heavy downpours. In cooler months, they would have been busy with pruning. The knowledge these gardeners possessed was often passed down through generations, a rich oral tradition of horticultural wisdom. They understood the nuances of soil, the specific needs of different plant species, the art of grafting, and the delicate balance required to maintain a vibrant ecosystem. They were truly masters of their craft, even if their names rarely made it into imperial chronicles. That's a level of dedication that transcends a simple job. One quirky or fringe tidbit concerns the specific tools they used. While we might imagine simple spades and watering cans, Mughal gardeners would have employed a range of specialized implements, some of which were quite ingenious for their time. Accounts mention unique pruning shears, custom-designed water distribution devices, and even specific types of baskets and containers for planting and harvesting. Historians still argue about the exact composition of these gardening toolkits and the regional variations that might have existed, but the sheer effort implied by their monumental achievements suggests more than just rudimentary equipment. Beyond the physical labor, there was an artistic sensibility to their work. They weren't just following instructions. They were interpreting the vision of the emperors and empresses, ensuring that the visual harmony, the aromatic tapestry, and the calming flow of water were perfectly maintained. Every trimmed hedge, every perfectly placed flower, Every clear channel was a testament to their dedication to aesthetic perfection. They were the unsung artists of the Mughal court, painting with living elements rather than pigments. These gardeners lived amidst the beauty they created, their daily existence intertwined with the changing seasons and the life cycles of the plants. Their quiet dedication ensured that for centuries, emperors, empresses, and courtiers could find solace and beauty in these paradisiacal retreats. As you drift deeper into relaxation, try to picture these silent guardians of green, their hands, gentle yet strong, nurturing the very dreams of paradise, ensuring that the legacy of the Mughal gardens continues to whisper through time. They are the quiet heartbeat behind the grandeur, allowing us to still imagine the scents and sounds of those forgotten, serene landscapes. Alas, even the most exquisite beauty and the most meticulously maintained paradises are subject to the relentless march of time and the shifting sands of political fortune. Our serene journey now takes a melancholic turn as we confront the decline and neglect that eventually befell many of these magnificent Mughal gardens, witnessing the slow fading of their former glory. It's a somber but important chapter, reminding us that even dreams of paradise require constant care to endure. The golden age of Mughal garden building, largely coinciding with the reigns of Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan, began to wane after the death of Aurangzeb in 1707. His successors, while still nominally powerful, faced increasing internal dissent, regional revolts, and the growing threat of external forces. As the empire gradually fragmented and its coffers dwindled, the immense resources required to maintain these sprawling gardens became increasingly difficult to sustain. Think of it like trying to keep a vast, intricate clock running when you're slowly losing all your tiny, crucial cogs. Maintenance of these gardens was a continuous, labor-intensive, and expensive undertaking. The sophisticated hydraulic systems needed constant repair and cleaning to prevent blockages and ensure water flow. The vast number of plants required regular watering, pruning, and protection from pests. Lawns needed to be kept pristine, and pavilions required structural upkeep as central imperial authority weakened. The dedicated teams of gardeners and engineers dwindled, and funds for essential maintenance were diverted to more pressing military or administrative needs. Imagine the subtle signs of neglect creeping in: water channels becoming choked with silt, fountains falling silent, once manicured hedges growing wild, and delicate flower beds reverting to less ordered vegetation. The carefully orchestrated balance between human design and natural growth began to tip, allowing nature to reclaim its domain, albeit in a less refined manner. What was once a vibrant tapestry of controlled beauty slowly became a charming but less orderly wilderness. Political instability played a huge role as different factions vied for power, or as external invaders like Nader Shah and later the Marathas swept through. The gardens often became collateral damage. Trees might be cut for firewood, pavilions might be used as temporary barracks, and water systems might be intentionally damaged or simply neglected. The focus shifted from creating and maintaining beauty to survival and defense. It's like watching a beautifully orchestrated play slowly unravel as the actors forget their lines and the set begins to crumble. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the anecdotal evidence suggesting that during times of extreme hardship or war, some communities living near neglected imperial gardens would covertly reuse elements like marble slabs or intricate tiles for their own homes, or local structures. While regrettable from a preservation standpoint, it speaks to the resourcefulness of people in difficult times, and perhaps a quiet homage to the material's original beauty. Historians still argue about the precise impact of these localized removals versus the more widespread decay caused by systemic neglect. By the 18th and early 19th centuries, many of the grand Mughal gardens, particularly those away from the direct imperial gaze, had fallen into disrepair. Some were completely abandoned, their outlines slowly swallowed by the landscape. Others were used for different purposes, their original design obscured by later occupants who had different aesthetic sensibilities or practical needs. The era of meticulous imperial patronage that had created them was fading, leaving these green paradises vulnerable to the ravages of time and changing fortunes. This period of decline is a poignant reminder that even the most ambitious dreams require continuous nourishment. The fading of these gardens reflects the broader trajectory of the Mughal Empire itself. As you imagine this slow, quiet retreat of order and beauty, perhaps you can hear the faint, melancholic echoes of fountains that once flowed, now reduced to a drip, a whisper of what once was. It's a gentle descent into silence, a reminder that all earthly glories eventually yield to the passage of time. From the gentle melancholia of neglect, our narrative now shifts to a new chapter in the life of the Mughal gardens, one marked by significant and often controversial transformation, the era of British influence. As the British East India Company, and later the British Raj, consolidated their power in India, they inherited these vast landscapes, and their approach to them was, predictably, shaped by their own distinct aesthetic sensibilities and practical requirements. It was a clash of cultures, played out on the verdant canvas of the garden. Imagine a meticulously ordered Persian Mughal Charbagh, designed for contemplation and intricate sensory delight, suddenly encountering the Victorian predilection for sweeping lawns, colorful flower beds in informal arrangements, and a focus on grand vistas for public promenades. The British, with their love for English garden styles and their practical military needs, often viewed the Mughal gardens through a different lens. They saw them sometimes as overly geometric, too enclosed, or simply not useful in the way they preferred. It was like trying to fit a delicate, intricate puzzle piece into a completely different, much larger jigsaw. One of the most immediate impacts was the conversion of certain garden areas for military purposes. Within formidable forts like Delhi's Red Fort or Lahore Fort, vast sections of previously cultivated gardens were cleared to create parade grounds, barracks, or defensive open spaces. The delicate balance of water channels and flower beds often gave way to utilitarian gravel paths and open fields. This was a pragmatic decision for the British, but a profound aesthetic loss for the gardens. Beyond military conversions, the British also began to remodel or improve existing gardens to suit their own tastes. This often meant simplifying the intricate Charbagh layout, removing water channels or fountains that were too costly or complex to maintain, and replacing the diverse, fragrant Mughal plantings with large expanses of lawn and mass plantings of European annuals. The emphasis shifted from intricate, layered sensory experiences to broader, more open vistas designed for leisure activities like cricket or formal promenades. You might find instances where original water features were filled in. Marble pavilions were adapted for British administrative use or as bungalows, and the very philosophy of the garden was altered. The intimate, enclosed paradise concept was often replaced by a more open, park-like aesthetic. While some of these changes were undoubtedly beautiful in their own right, reflecting a different horticultural tradition, they inevitably erased much of the original Mughal character. It's like an antique painting being restored with modern, brightly colored paints that completely change its original tone. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the British fascination with bungalow gardens, which sometimes incorporated elements borrowed from Mughal design, but often in a much simplified or eclectic way. You might see a small Charbagh-like layout in a private garden, or a miniature chatter feature, but divorced from the grand imperial scale and profound symbolism. It was a kind of cultural appropriation, taking elements they admired and fitting them into their own domestic landscape. Historians still argue about the extent to which British landscape architects understood or appreciated the underlying philosophical and symbolic layers of Mughal garden design, or if their approach was largely superficial. However, it wasn't all destruction. The British also played a role in documenting some of these gardens through surveys, photographs, and written accounts, which, ironically, now aid modern restoration efforts. And in some cases, certain Mughal gardens were maintained, albeit in an altered form, as public parks or government properties, ensuring their continued existence, even if their original spirit had changed. The British influence on Mughal gardens is a complex chapter, one of both preservation and transformation, appreciation and alteration. It marks a period where these ancient paradises had to adapt to a new dominant culture, losing some of their unique identity, but ensuring, in some cases, their physical survival into the modern era. As you consider these changes, imagine the subtle shift in ambience, from the intimate whispers of Mughal contemplation to the more open, often bustling atmosphere of a colonial park, a gentle transition in a long, green story. From the period of British adaptation and occasional alteration, our journey now turns towards a more hopeful, yet incredibly challenging chapter. Restoration efforts. In recent decades, there has been a significant and commendable drive to revive these forgotten paradises, to bring back the serene beauty and historical integrity of Mughal gardens. This is a meticulous, often painstaking process, much like trying to reconstruct an ancient tapestry from faded threads, relying on historical accounts, archaeological findings, and, as we discussed earlier, those invaluable miniature paintings. Imagine the immense task, taking a neglected, overgrown, or even partially destroyed garden site and attempting to peel back the layers of time to reveal its original form. It's not just about planting new trees. It's about re-establishing original water systems, recreating intricate pathways, identifying and replanting historically accurate flora, and restoring damaged pavilions. This isn't just gardening. It's archaeological detective work combined with highly specialized horticulture and architectural restoration. One of the prime examples of successful restoration is the Humayun's tomb garden in Delhi, which underwent a massive restoration project initiated by the Aga Khan Trust for Culture in collaboration with the Archaeological Survey of India. This multi-year endeavor focused on reinstating the original Charbagh layout, repairing the intricate water channels, and recreating the precise geometric planting patterns. They even had to excavate and repair parts of the original 16th century hydraulic system. Imagine the joy of seeing water flow again through channels that had been dry for centuries, bringing life back to an ancient design. Another significant site benefiting from restoration is the Shalimar Bagh in Kashmir, which has seen efforts to maintain its terraced glory and elaborate water features. While perfect historical authenticity is challenging given the passage of centuries and changing environmental conditions, these efforts aim to capture the spirit and design principles of Jahangir's original vision. It's like breathing new life into a beloved ancient song, allowing new generations to hear its beautiful melody. The challenges are considerable. First, there's the lack of precise historical documentation for every single plant or detail. Historians still argue whether certain plants widely available today were indeed present in Mughal gardens, or if modern interpretations inadvertently introduce new species. Secondly, the original water sources or hydraulic systems might be damaged beyond simple repair, or modern urban development might have encroached upon them. Thirdly, changing climatic conditions and water availability mean that what was feasible centuries ago might be difficult to sustain today without modern intervention. It's a delicate balance between historical accuracy and contemporary practicality. One quirky or fringe tidbit about these restorations is the use of satellite imagery and advanced surveying techniques to map out original layouts that are no longer visible on the ground. By analyzing faint traces or historical photographs, restorers can pinpoint former walls, channels, or planting beds with remarkable precision. This fusion of ancient history and cutting-edge technology is a quiet testament to human ingenuity across the ages. Despite these hurdles, the impact of these restoration efforts is profound. They allow us to experience these gardens more closely to their original intent, to understand the Mughal aesthetic more fully, and to connect with a powerful legacy of beauty and tranquility. They also contribute significantly to local tourism and heritage preservation, ensuring that future generations can find solace and inspiration in these revived paradises. These projects are more than just about restoring old gardens. They are about rekindling a dream. They remind us that even after periods of neglect and alteration, with dedication and careful effort, beauty can be reborn. As you listen, imagine the quiet dedication of the restorers, carefully tending to the earth, laying stone, and coaxing new life from ancient designs, ensuring that the peaceful whispers of the Mughal gardens can be heard once more. From the meticulous efforts of modern restoration, our tranquil journey now expands to consider the broader, profound impact of these serene spaces, the enduring legacy of Mughal gardens, far from being mere historical relics. Their influence has stretched across continents and centuries, shaping landscape design globally and inspiring countless creators with their unique blend of order, beauty, and spiritual symbolism. It's like a gentle ripple effect, starting with a single stone dropped into a perfectly still pond, spreading outwards endlessly. The fundamental principles of the Mughal garden, the Charbagh layout, the emphasis on flowing water as both an aesthetic and practical element, the symmetrical arrangement of plants and structures, and the creation of an enclosed paradisiacal space have left an indelible mark on garden design. When you see formal gardens in other parts of the world with clear axial paths, central fountains, and distinct quadrants, you are, in a subtle way, witnessing the distant echoes of Mughal influence. One of the most direct lines of influence can be traced through the subsequent garden traditions of India and beyond. Later Indian rulers, even after the decline of the mules, often emulated their garden styles, albeit with local adaptations. You can see hints of Mughal inspiration in many of the royal gardens built by Rajput princes or later regional dynasties. The aesthetic became deeply ingrained in the subcontinent's horticultural identity, a testament to its enduring appeal. Beyond India, the influence traveled through trade, cultural exchange, and even later, colonial interactions. Historians still argue whether certain elements in European formal gardens, particularly those from the 17th and 18th centuries, with European sensibilities that also valued order and symmetry in landscape architecture. Imagine garden enthusiasts across the globe quietly absorbing lessons from these distant paradises. Consider the role of symbolism. The Mughal garden wasn't just a pretty place. This profound connection between nature, art, and spirituality is a powerful legacy. It encourages us to see gardens not merely as decorative spaces, but as places that can nourish the soul, offering solace and an escape from the mundane. This spiritual dimension, expressed through design, is perhaps one of the most timeless and universal aspects of their influence. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the fascinating way Mughal garden elements sometimes found their way into unexpected places. Even in decorative arts, you might find miniature Charbagh patterns on textiles, carpets, or even intricate jewelry boxes. These small, portable representations of the grand gardens suggest how deeply embedded the aesthetic was in the collective consciousness, a miniature piece of paradise to carry with you. Historians still debate the extent to which these decorative motifs directly influenced garden design in other cultures, or if they were merely parallel expressions of a shared aesthetic. Furthermore, the Mughal garden's ingenuity in water management in arid climates offers invaluable lessons, even today, particularly in a world facing increasing water scarcity. Their sophisticated hydraulic systems, designed for efficiency and aesthetic appeal, represent a sustainable approach to landscape design that remains relevant. The blending of functionality with profound beauty is a timeless lesson they impart. The enduring legacy of these forgotten gardens lies not just in their physical remnants, the integration of art and life, and the creation of havens for peace and contemplation. They remind us that human ingenuity, when combined with a desire for harmony, can create spaces of lasting tranquility. As you continue to drift, let the timeless influence of these green dreams wash over you. As the echoes of their global influence gently fade, let's delve deeper into the very heart and soul of Mughal gardens, their profound symbolism of paradise. We've touched upon this before, but it's a concept so central to their existence that it deserves a closer, more contemplative look. These weren't just pretty arrangements of plants and water. They were meticulously crafted allegories, tangible representations of the divine realm, designed to transport the visitor to a state of spiritual bliss. Imagine a world where the concept of heaven is vivid and constantly present in the collective imagination. For the mules, deeply rooted in Islamic tradition, the Quranic description of paradise was not merely a poetic ideal, but a concrete vision. Paradise is consistently depicted as a lush garden, abundant with flowing rivers of water, milk, honey, and wine, shaded by fruit-laden trees, and blessed with eternal springs and fountains. To build a garden that mirrored these descriptions was, therefore, an act of piety, a way to bring a piece of the divine to earth. The most obvious symbolic element, as we've discussed, is the Charbagh layout itself. The division into 4 parts, intersected by water channels, directly evokes the 4 rivers of paradise. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a deliberate design choice, making the garden a sacred microcosm. When you walked through a Charbagh, you were, in a sense, metaphorically strolling through the gardens of heaven, an earthly anticipation of eternal delight. This profound symbolism is part of what makes these gardens so deeply soothing. They were designed to soothe not just your body, but your very soul. Water, in its various forms, channels, pools, fountains, and cascades, carried immense symbolic weight. Beyond its practical cooling and irrigation functions, it represented purity, life, and the bounty of divine grace. The continuous flow symbolized the eternal flow of life in paradise. The shimmering reflections in pools mirrored the heavens above, blurring the line between the earthly and the divine. Imagine the psychological effect of stepping from a dusty, chaotic world into an ordered space where crystal-clear water perpetually flowed. It would have been instantly calming, a literal baptism of tranquility. The choice of flora was also steeped in symbolism. Cypress trees, with their solemn, upright forms, often represented eternity, death, and the divine. They acted as visual anchors, grounding the heavenly vision in earthly reality. Fruit trees, on the other hand, symbolized life, fertility, and the endless sustenance found in paradise. Fragrant flowers, beloved for their beauty and scent, represented the exquisite sensory delights promised in the afterlife. Even specific colors might have held meaning, though this is an area where historians still argue about the precise interpretations. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the concept of hash-behesht, or 8 paradises in Mughal architecture, where a building might be designed with 8 chambers surrounding a central hall, often associated with octagonal pools or courtyards. While primarily an architectural concept, it subtly reinforced the idea of paradise as a space of 8 heavens, a spiritual dimension often brought to life through surrounding gardens. It's a subtle architectural echo, a whispered reminder of the ultimate goal. The entire experience of a Mughal garden was designed to be immersive and transformative. The enclosing walls created a distinct boundary between the profane world outside and the sacred, ordered space within. The progression from gate to central pavilion or tomb was a journey, a pilgrimage from the earthly to the divine. This deep spiritual resonance is why these gardens don't just feel beautiful. They feel right, harmonious, and profoundly peaceful. They were not merely ornamental. Let's allow our senses to fully embrace another crucial element that made Mughal gardens such utterly soothing sanctuaries: their deliberate and masterful soundscapes of serenity. These weren't just quiet places. They were meticulously designed to offer a symphony of calming sounds. Imagine entering one of these grand gardens. The first thing you might notice, after the visual splendor, is the distinct absence of harsh urban clamor. The high walls that enclosed the Charbagh acted as natural sound buffers, filtering out the noise of the outside world. This deliberate quietude set the stage for the subtle symphony within. It's like stepping into a perfectly insulated sound studio, only instead of recording equipment, you have fountains and chirping birds. The most dominant auditory presence, as we've explored, was the water. Every aspect of the ingenious hydraulic system was designed to contribute to the sonic landscape. The gentle gurgle of water flowing through shallow marble channels, the soft splash of a fountain as it collected in a pool, the delicate ripple as water cascaded over a carved chatter. Each had its own distinct, yet harmonious, sound signature. They were quiet, persistent whispers, a steady, rhythmic presence that grounded the experience and lulled the senses. Think about the psychological effect of these sounds. The consistent murmur of flowing water is inherently calming to the human mind. It masks other, less pleasant noises, creates a sense of freshness and coolness, and provides a continuous, subtle rhythm that can aid in meditation or simply help you drift off to sleep. It was, in essence, the original white noise machine, perfectly engineered by centuries of aesthetic refinement. Beyond water, the vibrant life within the garden contributed its own gentle melodies. Birdsong would have been a constant, delightful companion. The carefully chosen flora attracted a diverse array of avian life. The chirping of sparrows, the melodic calls of songbirds, perhaps the occasional vibrant squawk of a parrot, a living testament to the garden's vitality. Imagine a faint bird chorus, always there but never intrusive, just a gentle reminder of nature's presence. Other subtle sounds would have contributed to the overall serenity. The soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, the occasional plop of a ripe fruit falling from a tree, the distant whisper of a courtier's silk robes, or the almost imperceptible footsteps on a marble path. These were not loud, jarring noises, but rather soft, ephemeral sounds that added to the immersive, calming atmosphere. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the anecdotal accounts of singing trees or musical fountains in some of the more elaborate gardens, where specific designs of water jets or hidden flutes in pavilions would purportedly create musical notes, while likely more an imaginative flourish than literal musical instruments. The entire soundscape was a deliberate act of design, intended to soothe and restore. It was a place where the clamor of imperial life, the demands of politics, and the anxieties of the world could be forgotten, replaced by a gentle, enveloping calm. The Mughal gardens were not just seen or smelled. As you relax further, let the phantom sounds of flowing water and distant birdsong cradle you, a gentle lullaby from centuries past. From the tranquil soundscapes, our journey through the Mughal gardens now brings us to an equally impressive, yet often unseen, aspect of their genius: the creation of subtle microclimates. These gardens weren't just aesthetically pleasing, they were brilliant examples of environmental engineering, meticulously designed to create cool havens, providing crucial relief from the harsh, often scorching, Indian landscapes. It was like having a natural air conditioning system, centuries before anyone dreamed of electricity. Imagine the intense heat of an Indian summer, with temperatures soaring. Stepping into a Mughal garden would have been like entering a different world, a world several degrees cooler, with a refreshing breeze and a palpable sense of dampness in the air. This wasn't by chance. It was the result of incredibly clever design and an intuitive understanding of physics and botany. The most significant factor in creating these microclimates was, of course, water. The vast network of flowing channels, pools, and fountains wasn't just for beauty or sound. It was a highly effective cooling mechanism. As water evaporated from the surface of channels and large pools, it absorbed heat from the surrounding air, naturally lowering the temperature. This evaporative cooling effect was amplified by the numerous fountains, which aerosolized water into fine mists, further enhancing the cooling sensation. Imagine the delightful chill of a fine spray on your skin as you passed a fountain, a welcome relief from the relentless sun. The extensive use of shade was another critical element. Large, mature trees with dense canopies were strategically planted to provide deep, consistent shade over pathways, seating areas, and pavilions. The architectural elements themselves, like the thick walls of pavilions and the deep overhangs, also provided substantial shade. This wasn't just about blocking direct sunlight. It was about preventing the ground and structures from absorbing and radiating heat, keeping the ambient temperature lower. It's like wearing a perfectly ventilated hat, but the hat is an entire garden. Furthermore, the materials used in construction played a subtle but important role. White marble, favored by Shah Jahan, reflects sunlight rather than absorbing it, contributing to a cooler environment compared to darker stones. The presence of lush greenery itself also contributes to cooling through transpiration, where plants release water vapor into the air, much like human perspiration. The collective effect of thousands of plants releasing moisture creates a significantly cooler and more humid atmosphere. One quirky or fringe tidbit concerns the strategic planting of specific fragrant plants, like jasmine or narcissus, whose evening fragrance was intensified by the cooler, more humid air within the garden's microclimate. Some historians speculate that the deliberate placement of these plants near open pavilions was intended to draw cooler, scented air into living spaces, effectively creating a natural perfumed air conditioner. Historians still argue about the precise scientific measurements of the temperature differences inside and outside these gardens, but anecdotal accounts consistently speak of their refreshing coolness. The enclosed nature of the Charbagh, with its high walls, also helped to trap the cooler, more humid air within the garden, protecting it from the hotter, drier air outside. This created a self-contained ecosystem, a veritable bubble of freshness in an otherwise challenging climate. It was a testament to the Mughal engineers and designers' profound knowledge of their environment and their ability to manipulate it with incredible finesse. These microclimates weren't just a luxury. They were a necessity for comfortable living during the hot Indian months. They transformed potentially unbearable conditions into idyllic retreats, allowing emperors and their courts to live and work in relative comfort and serenity. As you drift further into relaxation, imagine feeling that gentle, cool breeze, that subtle dampness in the air, a testament to the ancient genius that made these gardens truly paradisiacal havens. As the gentle, cool breezes of the Mughal microclimates softly lull you, we arrive at our final imagined destination within these remarkable spaces, a moment for a final stroll and reflection on the lasting peace of these green dreams. We've journeyed through centuries of history, from the initial visions of Babur to the golden age of Shah Jahan, witnessed the decline and the hopeful efforts of restoration, and explored the profound symbolism and sensory magic woven into every element of these gardens. Now, as the sun dips low in our imagined sky, let's simply absorb the enduring tranquility they offer. Stand for a moment by a tranquil pool, perhaps in the Taj Mahal garden, the white marble glowing softly in the fading light. The reflection of the towering mausoleum shimmers on the water's surface, perfectly still, blurring the lines between reality and reflection. The air is calm, perhaps carrying the faint, sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine as the day's heat begins its slow retreat. You might hear the distant, drowsy chirping of a last bird settling in for the night, or the whisper of leaves in the gentlest of breezes. These gardens, whether grand imperial complexes or intimate noble courtyards, were always about creating a sense of escape, a haven of ordered beauty. They were designed to quiet the mind, to soothe the senses, and to offer a connection to something larger and more serene than the everyday. The symmetrical layouts instilled a sense of balance and harmony. The constant flow of water provided a reassuring rhythm, and the vibrant yet meticulously placed flora delighted the eye without overwhelming it. Imagine the profound sense of calm that must have washed over the Mughal emperors after a day of managing a vast empire, stepping into such a perfectly crafted paradise. Even today, in their restored or remnant forms, these gardens retain an incredible power to instill peace. They are living museums of a vanished aesthetic, a testament to a culture that deeply valued beauty, order, and spiritual contemplation. They remind us of humanity's enduring quest to bring heaven to earth, even if just for a fleeting moment. Historians still argue about whether the complete experience of a Mughal garden can ever truly be recreated, given the loss of specific plant varieties or the nuances of daily court life. But their essence, their spirit of serenity, undoubtedly endures. One quirky or fringe tidbit is the concept of moonlight gardens, which were specifically designed to be enjoyed after dark, often with white or pale flowers that would glow in the moonlight, and water features that would sparkle under the stars. Imagine experiencing the garden with heightened senses, relying more on sound and scent than sight, as you drift further into a state of deep relaxation. This dedication to nocturnal beauty speaks to a profound appreciation for all facets of nature's calming power. The slow, gentle rhythm of the Mughal garden is a timeless antidote to the rush of modern life. It invites you to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to simply be present. The whispers of ancient fountains, the rustle of historic leaves, the phantom scent of long-lost blooms. These are the gentle lullabies that these forgotten gardens continue to sing, a silent promise of peace and restful dreams. As we bring our journey through the forgotten gardens of the Mughal emperors to a close, allow the images, sounds, and scents we've conjured to linger in your mind. Feel the cool air, hear the murmuring water, and sense the profound tranquility of these ancient spaces. These green dreams, once the private havens of emperors, now extend their timeless peace to you.